here with my segment on Uranus going in through Taurus. I think it's a really exciting time for all of us with Chiron in Aries as well. Just knowing that Chiron in Aries will be a longer transit than Uranus in Taurus. Uranus in Taurus kind of fits in the middle with Chiron in Aries on either side. So Uranus will leave Taurus by the time Chiron in Aries hasn't finished yet. So anyway, things to talk about another time. But so let me get into what I will be sharing with you in this time of getting prepared for this whole transit of Uranus through Taurus. I think it's really quite exciting because what we're going to find is, this time of Uranus in Aries, it's been a little bit crazy, hasn't it? It's like this energy, which is the whirlwind of Uranus, kind of throwing things around, and it's going everywhere and all over the place or whatever. But in Taurus, at least, it can be grounded somehow, for good or bad or whatever that would mean, but it becomes much more tangible. So great for, let's say, all the ideas that have been circulating, we don't know what to do with them, and now it becomes the time to work on them. Some of those ideas will just fly away now because they're not going to be given the time or the energy to, make that into something, as we'll see. And so that's what we want to work with. So I'm connecting this story very much through, let's say, the living symbols of Uranus, through the myth, through his story, through our story, the living story of Uranus in our lives. And that's what I want you to connect to through this, this talk, as well as, after this talk and the worksheet that I give you and whatever. So I'm going to kind of be bringing up a few varied things to do with that in the symbols that become so potent as planets, download what they're all about to us, through their time here. And we can see that through things that have happened before as well, in the periods of time that Uranus has been in Taurus before. So it's a bit of a combo of things to do here, because the other people in the dream team will be, of course, I know Christina's doing Uranus in Taurus through the houses, so that kind of clears that up for some. Okay, Pacha will be, talking about the significance of the aspects made, particular planets during this transit. So I'm kind of giving this a bit more of a colouring to what this could be, and a whole lot of the possibilities that I want you to kind of explore, because Uranus is about exploring the unknown and all of that. So let's get into it. Let's make this exciting. So the symbolic kind of nature of Uranus in Taurus, and of course, knowing and doing astrology well, I think, stems from a very good understanding of the archetypes, the symbols that they present, and working with those. So when we see combination, it's like we add, all those symbols into a kind of a new image, so to speak. And that can be just so clear, and then makes it so much louder and more profound in how we see that all around the place. So, making these symbols kind of alive and part of our world and part of our co-creative aspect of, big reasons why we do astrology, because it's about creating our lives, making them better and that type of thing. To do this work is to find these most profound sort of downloads of information that come, at various times for all of us, and the metaphoric correlations, the larger than life experiences that, we can read in a myth, or see in a myth, or see in a myth of Taurus or Uranus, and then see it happening in our lives and go, wow, that's just so profoundly connected to what's going on. So I want you to go exploring all those areas. Remembering that we don't have to sort of we can read into the ancient myths, and they are very deep and symbolic. But do we have to stay there? There's so many other stories always being told, and from different cultures. And of course, Western astrology is very much, tuned and based into the history of the Greek mythology and myths. So, but these days we're kind of combining a lot more things by the people that are into it. Indian, Hindu, Chinese, wherever and whatever your own particular culture that might influence, the mythology of the sky. Uranus is a sky god. So what does that sort of tell you about this kind of energy that is the sky god in your culture? Perhaps add that to it. Don't be focused. I want to open some doors for you to look further beyond all of this. And all of this, helps us to connect to our story and to be able to live our hero's journey out a lot sort of more fulfillingly, I suppose is the word is, by understanding what's going on, what steps need, is the best way to step forward at this point of life, and when we, to know when big turning points are going to happen and that sort of thing. Because for some of us, Uranus in Taurus will mean huge turning points. For others, it will be not as significant, because it will depend. Is your sun there? Is an angle of your chart there? Is is Neptune there? Is whatever? Is the moon there? When we say outer planets transit inner planets, so the outer planet like Uranus with Sun, Mercury, the moon, Venus will make more significant sort of shifts in our lives than it would if it was transiting Pluto or if it was transiting an outer planet. But again, your Neptune might be conjunct your moon, so it's going to be doing it all, at the same time. So, there's all these variations and different levels for people to experience the shift and the change that Uranus will bring somehow to your life. It just kind of depends on the level that it will do that, but also the level of our own kind of where we are in life, our age. If you've just kind of started a job, you're in a kind of a new field of life. It doesn't mean that you're going to change or leave your job. It could, who knows? There's just so many variations about this. And one thing that we always say with Uranus is you can't predict what Uranus will do. So what's the point of predicting? Let's just get into, imagining the story for ourselves and see how good we can be with being quite deliberate about our steps now, because Taurus is like that. Taurus does things for a reason. It's an earth sign, right? It's not as kind of out there and flippant as Aries or that sort of energy that has to be to exist, to be ignited. Yes, so we're ignited. What are we going to do about that now as we bring it down to earth? So I want all of you to go looking at first of all your Uranus story, and then putting it into the Taurus sort of segment of your astrology chart. So here we've got the strangest, wildest, most changeable and radical planet in pretty much a completely, different and opposite archetype, in the sense of it's the most earthy, grounded, fixed, immovable, stubborn, unchangeable sign, which is most resistant to change. So here we have a bit of a clash, don't we? But when we're looking into it further, we kind of go, oh, I'm going to be stuck. I'm not going to be able to, do all the changes that I want to go through in my life. But in fact, Uranus will break the ground up a bit for us to inevitably push something through that needs to come through. And Uranus gives that, again, that chaotic kind of Aries, Uranian energy, a bit of grounding. It's like grounding electricity and making that sort of wildness up there go and put it into some effect down here. So all of that, energy that is Uranus kind of always coming in, the higher octave of Mercury, often it's called, you know, this information sort of download, what Taurus is going to do is help that become much more, again, purposeful. Get rid of some of the noise that's going on. Like, not all of that noise is what we want. Like, you know, social media will give us enough of that kind of thing. It's like, whoa, there's too much going on. So, you know, let's just go outside and look at the flowers for a while. So, you know, again, what kind of things have been kind of, you know, circulating in your sort of time space, and what you want to do with them now is very, very important, or what you will do with them now. Okay. Will is an Aries thing and Taurus is a do thing. Okay. So you've got the will, now it's, you've got to do it. Okay. So Uranus, just to, you know, brief line down the bottom there, Uranus is exalted in the opposite sign of Scorpio. So some astrologers would say that Uranus is in detriment in Taurus, meaning it's in its worst place in, you know, in the zodiac. I don't really go for that as a thing in particular, but I do keep note of it because it gives us that idea of how, you know, perhaps the difficulties that we're going to have with Uranus trying to make change in our lives with this sort of stubborn sort of Taurus energy that won't move easily. So what's going to make the bull run? What's going to make the bull move? What's going to make the bull, I mean, we know anyone that is, you know, very Taurus-like will be so incredibly gifted in doing something and plodding away with it, and, you know, some kind of artisan artist. And we'll see that in some of these examples and stuff. So you can get very, very inspired by this, that's for sure. And that's the purpose of why I do astrology as well. So, so just have a think, you know, Scorpio is an energy, it's a transformative energy. So it's always, in a sense, needing to change, or that's its biggest lesson. So its ultimate sort of highest divine goal is to transform somehow. And that's change, right? So whereas Taurus is the opposite, it holds on to what it has, it holds on to what it needs, it, you know, it holds on, it just pretty much holds on. So Uranus is kind of coming through and kind of, you know, doing a Scorpio thing in a sense. It's like, let go a bit, let go, you know, do you need all this stuff? Do you need all this baggage around you, so to speak, you know, and in a sense asking us to lighten up, right? So here we go. We're going into an area of, you know, completely unexplored territory. You know, because Uranus hasn't been in Taurus unless you're over 84, which some of you might be, of course. You know, none of us have experienced Uranus in Taurus before. Okay, so most of us. So we're going to uncharted territory. And, you know, it is like a kind of, you know, a spaceship, you know, landing down on something that you haven't seen before, okay? And that is something about Uranus always. It's always something you, as much as you may think you're the coolest dude in the world, or you are very Uranian-like, as in you've got a lot of Aquarius, and I'm kind of hip to things, and I'm cool to new experiences, and I love radical people, and I love change, and we relate to that archetype. The thing about Uranus, and Chiron is very similar in that way, is that there's always something else. There's always going to be something that will shock us, that we don't like, that we don't, you know, like it's alien to us, okay? And the acknowledgement of that as we go into Uranian experience is that's exactly what Uranus is. It's a Uranian experience. So if you're connected in the Aquarian archetype and Uranus, there's still something that's going to be different, okay? And it's an important thing to remember with Uranus. Yeah, what house aspects will be triggered, and you can look into the eclipses that are coming up, especially in July this year, with a Mars retrograde coming up as well. And then, you know, quite a significant combination of Uranus meeting the North Node, but that's in 2023. And the last time it did that was in 2005. And I've got a lot more to talk about that, but more in the astrological sense for another time. Anyway, so expect the unexpected, expect change, expect breakthrough. And you'll hear that with anyone that's talking about Uranus transits. breakdowns, disruptions, dismemberment of some kind where, you know, it's not the same as it ever was by the end of this transit, you know, so something has shifted, transformed. Will it be put back together? Some things will be, some things won't be. Some things will be, you know, it will stay like that forever. So yes, stirring things up, and this can be either positive or negative, a healthy experience or an unhealthy experience. And the best thing that we need to remember at this time is that, you know, there's a difference between the word disconnecting and severing ties, as it is to sort of separate from something in a healthy way, like, you know, an old partner, you know, not an old partner, but, you know, a lover or something, and separate and go your separate ways, then sort of, you know, disconnect abruptly or leave things unsaid, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, there's many levels of that sort of sense of separation and shifting the dynamics. As we know, it's better to invite and create change into our lives and have it forced upon us. Like if we know that something's got to go or give or whatever, and then, you know, it happens to us before we've had a chance to act on it. I think Chiron in Aries will help there. It's like, you know, bend with the change, you know, move with the change as opposed to breaking during the change as well. So important things to remember too, because, you know, Taurus is pretty fixed. So, you know, and can be very stressed. And so, like, deal with those things before, because you already know, before you break, fall down, you know, all that kind of stuff, or something is shattered beyond repair, right? That could be in a relationship as well. You know, in social freedom, the individual is a Uranian thing, being, you know, uniquely me. I stand out from the crowd. I'm different from everyone else. I'm not like you, all those things. And, you know, as we go through that sort of story in life, you know, sometimes we go through that sort of being the outcast, the outsider, the maverick, which is also very Chironic, as you'd know, and sort of separated from the crowd. You know, and there's a two-sided sort of part for that. There's a good part of that, because we choose to be like that. We don't want to be, you know, of the popular guys or, you know, whatever. We want to be different. We want to be unique. And then by doing that, we become this exactly what we're kind of not really wanting from that experience. So have a look at what kind of, you know, rebellious actions and what they're leading to, because they're not also always what we want or consider. I've always said the rebel with a cause and the rebel without a cause, you know, which one's better? You know, I just got to rebel because I feel something rising in me, or, you know, there's a reason that I'm rebelling. And of course, as teenagers, we don't know what that cause is particularly. Astrology being very helpful in this regard, to know what teenagers are going through and all that type of thing. And then, you know, as we get older, you know, there's a reason I need to rebel. I've got to get away from this oppression, repression, you know, whatever. And we know what that is. And of course, revolutionary, liberty, equality, fraternity. You need to operate in these kind of standards, let's say, or we die. You know, we really die inside if we can't have a certain amount of, you know, or what other people need more, people need more stability, all that type of thing. You know, to be fully alive and ignited is to actually buzz with our own kind of, you know, good energy and spirit. And that's what Uranus is about. And most of you would know that it is a crazy looking planet as well, because it spins on its side. And it does have some rings, but it spins on its side, and it's our orbit, you know, it's like a 90-degree angle to the rest of the planets. As you know, Saturn's got rings that go like that. So it's going like this and moving around. So it's completely odd already. It was the first one to be seen through a telescope, so it is a first. And you know, that makes it really quite, because its discovery really changed quite a lot of things for, you know, in the world, to kind of, it actually doubled the size of our universe. I think, you know, overnight, pretty much, you know, like that's what we knew, that's where Saturn was. And then all of a sudden, from Saturn to Uranus, we didn't have the centaurs discovered yet, which is Chiron and stuff. it doubled in size. Like, whoa, it's so much bigger, this vastness of what we are in. And of course, you know, I won't get into what they thought about, you know, Saturn being the edge of the universe and the starry firmament being like a blanket that covered up to heaven, and all kinds of beautiful stories about, you know, the night sky. But all of a sudden we kind of went into, you know, this far out zone, and it hasn't stopped since, has it? Like, you know, discoveries upon discoveries, and how bigger we're getting all the time. The important thing here is as well is that the orbital period, 84 years, is in fact the what do you call it, the human, I think the male's human normal lifespan. Okay, so it's kind of like, you know, the normal human, the perfect human or whatever, will live 84 years. And it has that cycle, and its cycle is very uniform, not like Chiron or Pluto. It, you know, it's pretty much 7 years through a sign, and so easy to kind of work with in that kind of way for a radical that it is. And just remembering that its glyph has got these kind of crescent moon shapes going outside, being, you know, being sort of gathered into a cross of matter, okay, and then a circle of spirit. So it's not really like grounded in the earth like Saturn is or Jupiter, but it is sort of gathering energy, right? It's gathering energy, and it's putting it into purpose, which is the circle of spirit, into some kind of purpose. Like, why, you know, why do we gather all this stuff together about the cosmos, or even just as astrologers? What are we gathering all this for? What are we going to do with it? It's a purpose of ours to make something more of that. So I think on a higher level, Uranus, the Uranus genius, what we're tapping into, what we're taking into from what's around, information, the cosmos, whatever, is what we can, again, individuate to become ourselves much better at being ourselves. And, you know, in astrology, we often see Uranus, or hear Uranus is the planet of enlightenment. We could also say Neptune is that, but we can also say that the sun is enlightenment as well. And of course, before Uranus was discovered in ancient traditions, it's the sun that's enlightened. So together, you know, these two are the light, you know, stories of our, you know, tradition. Okay. You know, the sun, of course, overrules that because it's a lot bigger and a lot brighter and all that type of thing, and gives off heat and does amazing things. Yeah, so anyway, I just want to sort of bring that in. Yeah, so its eccentric orbit, ellipsis, sorry, not its orbit. Its orbit is perfect. I just wanted to say, and you hear this a lot, there's quite a meme going on around it, but he used to be called George. You know, Bode, who gave him the name, gave Uranus the name at his discovery, because it followed the tradition of he was the father of Saturn, and he came after Saturn. So this is, you know, like Saturn was the father of Jupiter, and the way that they go out. So, it makes sense that Uranus is the next one. But then it kind of, you know, didn't continue with Neptune and Pluto, not in that chronology or hierarchy of family in the myths and stuff anyway. Yeah, and it used to be called George. It was actually called Georgium Sidus for 80 years. So he had this kind of weird name, and that was because of all the kings, and the kings were fighting about who should be named after, or the French king or the English king or the, you know, anyway, interesting stuff. But what the most important part about the discovery time, as a very symbolic thing, because it was the first planet discovered, was that revolution and rebellion were huge around the planet, especially, you know, because of the War of Independence in the USA and the French Revolution that just happened, you know, a few years later in 1789. So it's always been associated with revolution and rebellion because it was born into consciousness at that time. It was discovered at 24 degrees of Gemini, and it was discovered into that time that we call the age of reason or enlightenment. And of course, that age of reason, enlightenment, started quite a bit earlier. But it was that significant shift on the planet where, you know, the philosophies and science really were changing because of the science that was being discovered, and more, you know, religion and the reorientation that followed that, because it just didn't make sense anymore that God was so in charge of the cosmos or the world or whatever, because the science didn't make sense with that anymore. And then it led to the age of discovery and invention, where, you know, because of what do we call it? The discovery of electricity, or the grounding of electricity, and experiments with lightning, that they were able to ground electricity and found out how to do it and conduct it. That opened up this huge era. So it's like electricity landed on the planet. Like, there was always lightning around and stuff, but it was like learnt how to be grounded and utilized and then put out there onto the planet. So, you know, really, really interesting kind of times. And I was looking at, like, because it was discovered at 24 Gemini, it would have been, and this would take a bit more research, but Benjamin Franklin was already doing these experiments. So what, you know, it would probably be very, very, very possible that they all started in 1760s when Uranus was in Taurus. Right, so bringing it back, you know, bringing this electrified energy onto Earth, and then lighting up our world, beginning the Industrial Revolution, because power could be used to light miners' lights and, you know, all sorts of stuff that then just, you know, continued. So it's, you know, it sent shockwaves, you know, through the planet, and still does, because we all, you know, we always have to think new things are always coming through. And I love the association with lightning and Uranus, because, as we know, we don't know when lightning will strike. I mean, we know when, you know, it's usually when a storm's happening, isn't it? So, but we don't know exactly, you know, where or how the shape of it's going to be or whatever it's going to hit. But what it's actually doing, and I love this combination, which reminds us very strongly about some Uranian energy, is the electrostatic discharge between electrically charged regions within clouds, or between cloud and the Earth's surface. The charged regions equalize themselves through a lightning flash. So it's almost like, you know, I mean, we know that, yeah, it will strike where the not the iron's hot, but where the right charge is. That's how it follows through its points. It's got to be at the right sort of whatever it is, to make that shape, which is quite incredible, because Uranus works like that in social society, in society, right? As in, it will find, you know, like we do, we find the people that are like us in, you know, all these kind of weird places, or it can ignite a rebellion, because all the people that are on the same wavelength will be, you know, striked up and that type of thing. So yeah, so it's all about equalizing something that's in the air or atmosphere, which is something really, I think, potent to work with. You know, like Uranus is coming down, and it's going to, because Uranus actually likes some kind of perfection and equalizing, of course, you know, to make something better, right? It is disruptive, but it is about making something better. So keep that in mind. I love the Uranus's discovery, the living myth of Uranus, because the myth is in their discovery charts. And without getting into it too much, Uranus in the 8th house, it's got a Scorpio moon, so it really kind of digs deep, and you know, it might look to be a bit more from the outside, but it really does, you know, confront change and so on. I like the story of Venus in Pisces there, because if we look at the myth of Uranus, he was denigrated by having his testicles cut off by Saturn, his son, because he was a monster. Oh, this is the sky god Uranus. And out of his severed testicles, Venus was born, you know, from the ocean. That's one of the myths. And look at Venus down the bottom there in Pisces, you know, coming out of the ocean. Uranus opposite Saturn and Mars, you know, really tell that story as well. It's Saturn that cut off his testicles, and he's conjunct Mars. Anyway, I was looking at the Chiron discovery chart in the same light, and it's just really potent symbols. As again, this is what astrology is, potent with symbology. So yeah, the sky god, again, you guys can read more about this, but this is a great image of this enormous Uranus down there getting his testicles cut off by his son Saturn, because Uranus was the sky god that would, lay with Gaia every night, his wife, and she actually didn't like it after a while or whatever, because, and with their kind of laying together each night, as the sun and earth, the sky and earth do, he's on top of her every night. Their children or offspring were all kind of monstrous, like the Cyclopses, the Titans, the Furies, and Aphrodite. Well, Aphrodite was, a bit of a separate story there. So, it's like, I don't know, these myths can be confusing in that way, but what we have to kind of consider is what perhaps we need to sort of sever about ourselves or life to move on to create the next phase as well. What was I going to say else about this? Yeah, so knowing that, Uranus is the primordial sky god who ruled over the whole zodiac in the end, the circle of sky, the circle, this everything, the heavens, okay? But he wasn't that liked, by his family and by his wife, and it sort of shows that sort of sense of freedom. He just kind of did his own thing, perhaps. You can read a lot into it, and some of you might want to read more of that. But quite often, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, Rick Tarnas, astrologer, historian, had written a book about calling Uranus Prometheus, because the Uranus story, the sky god, doesn't tell us enough. There's not that many stories about him. Like Jupiter, there's plenty, right? And so Prometheus being much more that kind of archetypal energy that we can understand as Uranian, as opposed to Uranus, the sky god. So, and that's because Prometheus was bold and brave and stole something from the gods in order to, give it to humanity as a good gesture, and then was punished for it. And so with Uranus, what we do know is that Uranus is often we have to go through that individuated streak to do something we know is right or whatever, and be careful what we get punished, careful that we might get punished with that. I mean, I've had that in the astrology world by just starting the CIA, and some people sort of not liking that because it's not the usual thing, and it's like, well, so what, and we all have something to sort of bear about that, Uranus, and where that is for us. As I look through your life and have a think about my Uranian story, and where have I been sort of, felt like I've been punished or cast out for what I've done, or just being myself. And that happens to all of us in different ways. But again, we just don't want to be anything else but ourselves. It feels foreign. So we know all these words. I don't have to go through all of that. But yeah, it's the new taking over the old, and the new system also, like from Capricorn to Aquarius, where we can make things better in our life. So again, Uranus transit is ultimately, where can I make things better, and perfect what I've got going on, right? And the function of Uranus is of course the urge to be free and liberated, breaking from past limitations, and the whole risk of being the individual that we are. And again, what we might be punished for that, or rewarded as well. That happens too. I'm not going to read all of this out because, again, the archetypal presence of Uranus, I think you all know that. I'll leave this, with the notes for yourselves. Liberation, freedom, all those words that quite well, perhaps. to keep in mind that during this time, we want to know where in our cycle of Uranus we are, okay? So if you've got Uranus in Scorpio, you'll be having an opposition. If you've got Uranus in Aquarius, you'll be having a square. If you've got it in Leo, you will be having a square, okay? Pretty easy to work out when we look at the crosses in the chart. You know, if you're around 2021, you'll be having your first square. If you're around 41, 42, you'll be having your opposition. And, you know, if you'll be having the waning square, you'll be 63, 64, and so on, or your return being 84. So, you know, what are we going through here at these points, and knowing, you know, this transit through Uranus? Actually, for me, it's a waning trine, you know, from Virgo to Taurus. So actually, I'm quite excited about that. I know the opposition was difficult, but as we get older, it's like, I don't really care what people think of me anymore, or not as much. And that's why older people get more eccentric. And that's true for a lot of us. So, you know, and that's because we've kind of broken through barriers. We've gone through those experiences, but we all have to go through that, you know, and once we've gone through that, it's never as hard as, you know, it will be again. Yeah, all these things, you know, about hard to predict exactly what's going on. So let's get inspired about it all, okay? What we have to think about now as this energy comes into Taurus is about the grounding of it all, okay? Because like I was saying before, Taurus is about, you know, practical application, manifesting something. You know, it gathers and puts everything into water it, make it grow. It's like tending to your garden. It's like now getting a fresh kind of bunch of bees buzzing around in your garden, right, to make them more technicolored and more exciting, and, you know, that type of thing. And the 5 senses being so important here. It's like almost like we're going to perhaps waken up our bodies and our senses and go, you know, I need some of this now, and I need this, and, you know, like let it in. I mean, again, be careful of, you know, letting too much in, or not the good things in, or whatever. There's all kinds of things like that that will be happening. But you get this great kind of image of that now, don't you? You know, the buzzing up of this kind of realm, and giving, you know, again, imagine a garden being much more fertilized by some cosmic bees or something, right? And then we bring in the Venus story, because Venus rules Taurus. So Venus is going to be important through this transit as well, or how, let's say, Venus and Uranus connect in your chart is going to tell you a little bit about your Venus, this transition. So how does Venus and Uranus connect in your astrology chart at this, you know, natally? Because we want to, you know, Venus is part of this story, and I see her very much as the bee, right? So she's a cosmic attractor as well. Like she goes for things that she likes, and she attracts things, you know, to ourselves, like people, like beautiful things, like whatever, you know, possessions. You know, it's very similar. It rules Taurus, so they've got this archetypal similarity. You know, we want to be in love when we have Venus involved. We want to be in love with being alive with Uranus in Taurus, you know, buzzed up, pulsing, you know, but actually get the rewards from it, right? Not just Uranus in Aries, again, all over the place. It's like we want to get some of that. It's like making amazing alchemical meals and stuff. You know, you put it all together and you just go, wow, this is pretty exciting stuff coming up. You know, yeah, connecting that to the manifestor or the magic maker. Uranus in Taurus, we'll see some examples. It's pretty exciting. And then, of course, the second house, where, you know, the second house is all about substance and earthy stuff. It's something that we want to, you know, it's tangible. It's about, you know, what we own, what our income is, our attitude to money, and that type of thing, and our resources. So the second house will be connected there. What's in our resource pocket? What's in our second house? How do I cope with that? It's all going to be kind of put into that whole mix and cauldron of Uranus, you know, coming up in Taurus. Let me see what time am I've got here. Actually, now I can't remember what time I started. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll keep going until it's done. So yeah, just, you know, as evolutionary astrology teaches, you know, we've got the planet first, and it has a sign that it rules, and then, you know, it's got a house that it's associated with. Okay, so putting those in together will be, you know, an important part of the story. The what, how, and where. The energy, of course, is Uranus in this case. Okay, because that is the what. How, it's the Taurus. Okay, so how is it being expressed? It's being expressed through a Taurus light. And where, that's going to depend what house it is for you as well. This is just an example of course, how you know, we put those archetypes together for teaching methods in evolutionary astrology. It's really important to get that sorted, to get that knowing the difference of it's a what, how, and where, as opposed to, you know, combining them all into kind of one melded pot. I actually don't agree with that. I think we really need to be clear about the difference of a planetary archetype, the difference of a sign archetype, and the difference of a house archetype. And of course, a planet is a wanderer. It's something that moves through the signs. A sign is a rich, dense part of the sky. At any part of this, you know, whatever sign you're looking into has got so much mythology and story about it. So it's pretty much, what's the story going on for that planet at the time, and then in what department of life, okay, or what house. So get that right. I put this together as, you know, as a glyph. Like I said, the symbols can speak, you know,